Sorry, and Rebecca are online too.
Okay.
Okay, so we have begun recording. Welcome to the March Design Review Committee meeting. I'm going to call the roll to confirm that our DRC members are present. Omari Davis.
Here.
Robert Dudka.
Here.
Rebecca Meyer.
Here.
Andrew Winter.
Here.
DRC meetings are held in person and streamed simultaneously to allow commissioners, applicants, and the public to attend online. For members of the board and applicants joining us this evening, if you lose connectivity tonight, please reconnect with us by phone. Keep your devices muted and your video turned off until your item is under review. Meeting chat is active for participants who need technical assistance and should not be used for questions. The public may observe these meetings, but participation in the discussion is limited to applicants and members of the HLRB. Public comment is welcome for the HLRB meeting on the third Wednesday of the month. And then finally, this is a public forum. This meeting is being recorded, and everything that is associated with this meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act requirements. So we are beginning with our first item, which is a return of a modification to the building facade at 2910 Columbia Pike to insert bifold windows into the existing restaurant window openings. This came to us last month, and since then the applicant has modified the application as suggested by the Design Review Committee to insert the bifold windows just into the existing window space. So you'll see on the images where the existing window is in the second drawing, and then above it that same space would be used for bifold windows. This is the design. Mr. Khan, are you on the line with us? No? Mr. Khan has had trouble calling into the DRC meetings in the past. Okay, do we have any comments about this initially?
I had a few. So the drawings are still showing that there's a portion of the wall to be demolished. And I don't know about anyone else. I'm personally opposed to demolishing it because I think there's a strong horizontal datum line, both with the single windows on either side of the proposed bifolds, as well as with the recessed doors on those return walls, there is a window, and those are all at that same horizontal datum, as well as the surrounding buildings on the block. Especially the one to the left, looking at it on the street. I don't know if anyone else has any strong preferences on it. It looks like they're proposing to demolish about 8 inches, but I think having that horizontal datum that's going to go up and down will be odd.
Can I ask for some? I wasn't there last week, so I'm missing the context of this. What?
Sure, Robert, I can tell you a little bit. So
I'll pull up the other images as well so you can see.
Yeah, so he presented last month, and he wanted to demolish the existing window openings. Those kind of 2 storefront windows on either side of the entrance. And he wanted to put in bifold windows that are full length. And so it would demolish the half wall below the window.
But where is this exactly? This
building is right, it's right next to, what is that?
Oh, it's next to Brick House on Columbia Pike. I'm pulling up images. I just am taking a minute over it.
It's right across from the Arlington Draft House on Columbia Pike. And this is it's a historic facade in the commercial form-based code. So therefore, we have purview of how the facade is treated. And the DRC talked about it last month, as well as the HLRB stating that they did not want the window openings to be expanded, and that he could put in some type of different window as long as it's in the existing window opening, which would also mean, like what Rebecca's saying, the size of the existing window openings.
Okay.
Robert, could I jump in here a second, Mandy?
Gotcha. Okay.
When you see that image that's up there, the problem is the drawings do not show the windows, the single windows on either side to the right and left of the large storefront windows. And I think that's what the concern may be, is changing that elevation across there. You're going to have these single windows on either side, and they're going to be at a different height above the sidewalk than the what is proposed in the drawings, as far as I can see.
Right.
Right, and then in this photo, you can see the return wall where the entry door is set back, and there's a window on either side.
Yeah, in the
So I think there's
right.
just a strong horizontal datum line that I think should remain.
And also, if I can jump in, the other thing that I'm noticing immediately is that these folding windows are it's divided into 5, whereas the opening is is now divided into 2. So I could see if you divided it into 4, especially if you somehow carried that line of the that kind of transom line somehow in the in the way that you subdivided the panels. But I find the 5 kind of weird, and I agree with everybody else about the lack of consistency with the elevation of the adjacent windows, either on the end of the facade or in the entry niche.
I would agree. I concur with everything that's been said. I think that the horizontal datum line that's missing from the proposed is definitely something that's not exactly what we were looking for.
Okay. All right. I will communicate that to the applicant and let him know. So I'll give him the option to amend these drawings and let you know how he decides to move forward. But say he were to move forward with what he has right now, I assume this is a discussion agenda item.
Yeah, well, yeah. If he insists on going to the full board meeting,
I would agree
I
with
assume
that.
he will, but he may try to amend the drawings. I just wanted to confirm.
Can you ask that the drawings be of the entire facade showing windows on either side? I think that's critical to this application.
yeah, I agree with that too.
And Robert, you're saying you don't like the 5.
I think it just completely changes the rhythm of the of the facade. I mean, I think that I could see making a concession, to operability to subdivide it into 4 so that you could, have smaller panels that you could open. But the 5 is a completely different rhythm, and it took what was a composition of kind of square window panels and turned it into basically vertical shutters kind of instead. It's a very different feel, I think. I think if they were to show this with the windows on either side, as Andy's suggested, I think you would see how weird this looks. And plus we can't tell, maybe it would look okay because the windows on either side would be the same width as those vertical panels, but I don't think so. So
Okay.
anyway, that's my thought.
Great. I have those notes. I will communicate those. Okay, so our next item is at 3550 Wilson. This is the former Arlington Arts Center, now the Arlington Museum of Contemporary Art. Ria, are you on the line with us?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. Hi. So we have this application, but I know that you would, I haven't pulled up both the drawings. I know that you changed it from 2 banners to 1 banner. I'm going to pull that up. Do you have the single banner rendering?
Not yet. I'm still waiting for our marketing team to send that in to me. The goal of it, once you've pulled up the current rendering, is it either going to be the one shown on the left or the right? We're not changing the actual design of the banner, unless the board has specific requests for whether you prefer the left or the right set of columns.
Okay. Sorry, I'm pulling it up now. Okay, so this is with 2 banners, and they are going to be attached to the building with rope and not with any permanent hardware. However, your sign ordinance only allows you to put up 1, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I apologize.
No. As you were saying.
Yes, we learned within the past 24 or 48 hours or so that we would only be able to have 1 banner up. The variance also only allows for 35 weeks, which we're happy to comply with. And the banners, as you can see, they're essentially the same except for the color of the logo. We are going to be going with the pink logo. It's just a matter of whether or not it's on the left set or right set of columns.
And this, so 35 weeks, are those consecutive? And will this be annual? So by temporary, what kind of temporary are we looking at?
The variance currently is unclear about whether or not it's consecutive. I have a meeting later on, I believe next week, with Essie over at zoning for whether we need to break up that amount of time. As for it being annual, these are temporary banners unless we come up with a new design that we would, of course, have to reapply for. I don't foresee us having this up for the next 5 years, every 35 weeks.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm leaving anyway.
Okay, so how does the DRC feel about, imagine this, but only 1 banner? And also, can I check, Ria, that door is not used.
It is only used as an exit or for special functions when it's manned for the entire time for a check-in, but our actual main entrance is going to be around the side.
Well, I find the 2 signs, one on either side of the doorway, and each encased 2 columns, to be better than the idea of putting only 1 sign up on either the right or the left. This is a very symmetrical, classical building, if you will, and to then disrupt it in this manner, visually lay on the street, seems to be, to me, inappropriate. I think that the DRC could recommend that they have 2 of whatever they're going to do, or I just find it disturbing to do this to the building.
The ordinance only allows them to have 1, which is why they've had to remove it. So I don't know that even the HLRB's recommendation could change that.
Even under the provision that if we rule that something is in the interest of the historic preservation, because what Andy's saying, I agree with that. This is a classical building. It's got 2 large bays. It's got, you know, a symmetrical portico with which has 2 pairs of 2 columns, and then, you know, so it's like, unless you were going to put something on center, it seems weird to have just 1 of them. But I had another comment, which is, I guess it bothers me a little bit to cover up the columns. So the question that I would have is it possible to make the banner out of something that is semi-transparent, so that you can kind of see the columns through the banner, you know, with the logo, you know, superimposed on top of it, so you see it sort of floating in front of the column, but you can kind of see the columns ghosted behind it, which would allow you to have the columns and the banners, and then I would join Andy in, in supporting, us at least attempting to see whether you could have two of them.
So the ordinance language you're talking about is for setback modifications. So this is not a setback modification. I don't think that's why the sign ordinance prevents there from being two banners. I could certainly join your meeting, Rhea, if that would help. At the same time, at that point, if you're concerned about the columns being covered and you're concerned about symmetry, you could have a horizontal banner that goes along the top, which is a single banner. It's symmetrical and it wouldn't be covering the columns.
You could do that. That would be another approach.
We have not ordered the banner yet, but some of our material tests also show a semi-transparent material that you could see the columns. I will certainly ask zoning about moving it to a single horizontal banner. They seemed. I definitely will check with them. I absolutely appreciate the board's support for having the two banners. We thought it also looked it looks visually correct this way. We just want to make sure that we're also abiding by the zoning ordinance.
Let me ask something else, because how does we've had this problem before with zoning and signs in the way that they interpret what a sign is and how big a sign is, because particularly if you were to make the banner semi-transparent, it seems to me the sign is basically the logo and the type. In other words, it's relatively small. It's not the whole banner if it's semi-transparent, because you're seeing through it. So banner is just the support for the sign, if you want to put it that way. So I don't know if that's at all helpful or not, but it's a thought.
I am happy to take all recommendations.
Yeah, and I have to click on the meeting. So it sounds like, but in general, the DRC does not object to banners on the front of the buildings. They like the idea of both. You don't object to the design. So in general, am I getting the impression that DRC is supportive?
Well, I also the other I don't understand. Again, I missed the beginning of this. So if this is a permanent museum, it seems odd to only be able to have the banners for 35 days.
Weeks. But
35 weeks. Sorry.
There's the monument sign in the front. Is that going to be changed as well, Rhea?
Eventually, not this fiscal year, and we each part of our building is essentially a different county department. So I've been working with at least the front of the building because we have a clearer ordinance about that. Our other things we will eventually submit to you will be parking lot banners and then the monumental sign. Our goal with these banners is to celebrate exhibition openings.
I see.
Especially we have the summer and fall exhibition, so we would love to have these up so people know that our building is still active. Most of our constituents many people don't know that we've opened up since COVID, so we're trying to draw the eye a little bit more. As far as the 35 weeks, we would love to be able to have them more often, but at this point, I've been working on getting these banners up for 9 months, and this has been the closest all the county departments have agreed that we could have it.
So the 35 weeks is for this sign. If you change the sign, do you get another 35 weeks? Like if you have a different exhibit that you're promoting, can you apply for another, or is it 35 weeks total in a year?
That is part of what I'm talking to Essie about because it's unclear. From what I've gathered, honestly, I think it's going to be 35 total in a year with 17 of nothing. But our intention is to reapply anytime we think of changing the design at all.
Right. Because again, this is this is pretty standard stuff. the Metropolitan Museum in New York does banners. Like pretty much everybody does banners on museums to advertise the the current show. And it seems like it would add, this isn't, you're not doing this for like to sell computers or something. You're doing this for the enrichment of the community, which you would think would be something that the county would be behind. And anyway, so I
would absolutely love your recommendation for this.
Huh? I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I absolutely would love your recommendation for this. To spare the long story, it's because our building is county owned and independently run. There's disagreements about which department we go to in order, who owns what. So any support we are happy to have, but that, yes, is our goal with the banners.
Right. Have you thought, I know this is a bit more of an investment, but have you thought about putting the banners like on the like big banners on the brick panels, say at the ends of the building? So you have really huge banners?
That was actually our first choice. As I said, I've been working on some version of signage for 9 months now. That was our first choice, but zoning said it was too large. So these banners we're showing now are what zoning said we are allowed to have at the max size.
Okay.
There's a square footage maximum. I don't know why. I don't know if people have gotten wrapped up in larger banners. I don't know what the safety reasons are, but there are like this ordinance language for temporary banners, ordinance language for how temporary banners can be installed. So if they were more permanent, they would have to have different installation. And then also ordinance language about how big it's allowed to be and what they're allowed to say. Again, don't know.
Yeah, but I think most of those zoning rules were formulated for the the purpose of controlling commercial advertising. So like somebody decides to put a huge sign on their building saying that so it doesn't look like Times Square, I think is the intent. But there's kind of a tradition in museums to put big banners that on and the thing to me is that they fit they fit the architecture and the historic preservation, because that's how people used to do it in the old days before they had LED displays and things. They would put banners on the outside of the building to advertise. So this is entirely in keeping with kind of a historic preservation point of view. But anyway, I think the lesson or what the message here is that we're happy to work with you to try to get whatever you can hopefully to make this work for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, feel free to invite me to that meeting with Essie, or I can connect with her separately, and I'll sit in and try to advocate.
We deeply appreciate it. Our goal in the short term is to approve whatever we can have approved. We have a show open now. We are opening another in June. But the long-term goal would be to work towards having banners like the Met.
Okay, so then in that case, based on the signage ordinance, before we try to buck the system, you would like to get one of these approved at the meeting on the 15th?
Yes.
Okay, so if commissioners, if that were to be the case and only one can be approved per the signage ordinance, how do you feel about that moving forward?
I think, honestly, a horizontal approach between the two sets of columns would be far more appropriate, and actually frame the banner instead of using the banners on the sides to frame an opening that's not going to be even used. It doesn't seem to. I find this is an historic building, and it is a classical symmetrical design, and what you do with the exterior of the site doesn't have to be symmetrical. Obviously, you have all sorts of exhibits there. And maybe the appropriate thing might be, if you want to do this, is to just erect it as a temporary thing outside of the building. It's another option.
Yeah, I was gonna.
You could put it on the site, and then I personally wouldn't find it disturbing, but I find this appealing.
If we did the horizontal, my apologies.
Go ahead.
If we did the horizontal banner, which we haven't ordered anything, of course, it's completely fine for us to make it horizontal. Would you still recommend the semi-transparent material?
Honestly, I don't think that is needed, depending on exactly where you put it. You might be blocking some light into the hallway beyond, and that might be a reason to make it a little bit more transparent.
Yeah, I think if it was horizontal, like, it wouldn't matter as much.
Okay.
Yeah,
colors aren't ornate. There's the capitals aren't ornate. There's no fluting. You wouldn't be covering up much detail.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with the horizontal study. If zoning will only allow one, with all of the other comments that have been said with the symmetry and.
I will add this to our notes because our variance does say it has to be displayed vertically. But with the support of the board, I'm happy to talk to Essie about the potential of at least having the one this size horizontally.
Well, thank you for your patience. So I will work with you this week. So projects going through this process, we have an additional week amendment period where we can change the plans up until they are submitted to the HLMB next Wednesday. So that could be something. And then, since we don't know what will be going on the agenda, I assume the commissioners feel comfortable with a discussion agenda, and then we'll see what has been worked out with zoning, and then see what they are proposing. How does that feel?
That sounds completely fine. Thank you so much for your support during this process. We're happy to make sure the history of our building is preserved, so we want to make sure that all the departments agree as we move forward.
Great. Thank you, Rhea. Thank you for your patience.
No problem.
Okay. Moving on, this is a minor change to the handrails on the front of the new construction at 2326 North Jackson. Let me just move this, turn this around. Mr. Benas, I believe you were with us today?
I am with you this evening. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Apologies for every time I say, "Are you with us?" I feel like I'm hosting a seance. Okay, so in the last set of plans, it sounds like the architect accidentally didn't mirror the the handrail from the left to the right. So you have updated that and also changed the design of the lintels and the pickets, correct?
We didn't really change the pickets. We changed the intermediate posts to extend slightly above the handrail on the two front sections. In the original approved plan, the intermediate posts were came up underneath the handrail, and the handrail was continuous. In this iteration, the handrail is discontinuous at the intermediate columns. While we were looking at the plans with one of the staff folks that came out to talk with us, we noticed there was a couple other issues that had never really been fully addressed when the handrails were added to this project. The handrails in the front will require, by code, a graspable rail. That was never shown on the original submission. for the subsequent submission. The graspable rails are shown on sheet A202. Bottom right is a photograph example where there's a handrail just inside of the wooden handrail, of the flat handrail.
Right.
Okay. Any questions from the commissioners?
Not on this part. I assume there's the back stair also, right?
Yeah, the stair didn't change.
I mean, the rail
There's-
is the rail.
I'm sorry, there's a side stair.
Yeah,
that,
the side stair.
Yeah, the original plan called for grade. Actually, we're not sure exactly where grade's going to be, but we're kind of hedging our bets that we may need a handrail based on a code requirement that there be no more than 30 inches from the platform to finished grade. I'm not sure that it's going to be needed, but I wanted to show it for you all in case it did and kind of get a pre-approval if it's needed. We prefer not to use it if we don't have to, but if that's the way the grade turns out, then we want to have that option.
Right. Okay. Does anybody have any comments about this?
Well, Andy, I don't understand why you need the post above the handrail on the front elevation. On the handrails that run between the major posts, you just have that short post. It's not what's usually done. I don't have any great objection. I'm just wondering why you did it.
Well, there's kind of two reasons. One, the handrails that come up the stairs, the two handrails, one on the left, one on the right side, as they come up, they are actually higher than the horizontal handrail. So those posts that those handrails die into actually want to be a little bit taller so that the handrail has a better detail for its termination. And so when we did that, it made more sense just to kind of keep that theme on the front and on that side.
Okay.
Anybody else?
This is Omari. I'm also not crazy about the extension there, but it's nothing to hold up the project or approval though. But it's kind of for the record.
So, Rebecca, do you have any thoughts?
I think the same thoughts that have already been shared. I understand all the code implications for it. So I don't think it's.
All right. So should we just put this on consent then?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
I do too.
Okay, well. Marina, would you like to do the honors?
Sure, so I will submit this to the HLRB as a consent agenda item. I'm going to upload the plans that you submitted to me. This means the DRC is recommending it for approval to the HLRB. The HLRB can pull an item anytime up until the vote. So even though it's on consent, it can still be removed from consent and discussed in the meeting. We would also pull it if we received any comments of concern or public speakers for the item anytime before the meeting. We would know about those before about 5 on the day. I will send you an invitation link to that meeting if you would like to attend. If you cannot attend, staff can represent you.
Well, let me just throw in that I think this is pretty non-controversial. the board takes this up in the first 15 minutes of the meeting, and it's over really quickly. So it won't take much of your time if you want to make yourself available for it. But if not, as Serena says, the staff can answer any questions.
Okay, well, I'll make sure I'm available.
All right, thank you very much. And so we are on our fourth and final item, which is the Reeves Farmhouse concept submission. Long awaited, very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I'll just talk a little bit about this for all the DRC members and all the other members who are here in the room are for that project team with Reevesland. I'm going to call it Reevesland. We call it the Reeves Farmhouse. It's located at 400 North Manchester. Just for a little bit of background, which we did provide the DRC ahead of time that, you know, the county's owned this since the early 2000s. We've been trying to find a tenant for the property. And right now the county is working with Habitat for Humanity and Larch to, I'm sorry, I always go back and forth on how to exactly say it.
Larch and Homemade as well.
And Homemade. There's many different partners that are all interested in this property and trying to make this work. And basically the DRC is going to be reviewing proposed addition and should be trying to provide feedback to the project team. There is a couple different people here in the room, some who you might be familiar with. We have Scott Matties here. We also have our project manager, Michael Spots, who's with Habitat. Some other colleagues, please introduce yourselves. So,
Luke Smith from Larch.
Sarah Moore from Larch.
And we also have somebody from Home.
Kristen is on the line.
Kristen's here too. So each one has a different role that they're playing in this. And right now there's a big timeline that we're working with everybody, all the members of the team. But we're trying to see if we can get some ideas down with the design. We could go look at the whole thing. We could get down to the details of the materials. But I think I'd like to leave it up to Scott to do most of the presentation on it because I think that the plans really show everything very well. And I'll just leave it at that. And unless, Michael, you want to mention anything else?
No, I'll just say that pleased to be excited to be part of this project team. I joined Habitat in November, but I know this project has been in the works for a very, very, very long time prior to that. So I want to acknowledge everyone that has engaged in that conversation beforehand. There's a lot we can talk about in terms of timeline, process, roles, and everything like that. I would like to do that. If we have time, we can do that at the end of the presentation, but I think that the main thing that's germane for this conversation today is to get right into the design. So I will be quiet and let Scott do that.
Great. All right. So I'll go ahead and just try and jump into it. Unless there's any other questions, we just jump into the materials. Scott, you just let me know how you want.
Is there any way for me to have control so I can test?
Yeah, sure. Just it's my mucky computer.
Because
might make it easier.
architects can't communicate without gesture.
Yeah,
I'm going to come over here so everybody can see. Good evening, everyone. Thanks again. Again, I'm Scott Matties with the Winsec and Associates. I think my colleague Rudica is online as well. I don't see her, but I think she is. Anyway, I'm going to track through this package. I think I'll go through some of the background stuff. Hopefully you've all had a chance to look at it. And I'm going to track through the background stuff relatively quickly, get to the design proposal. We can always circle back and look at the underpinnings of the historic report. So I'm just going to move on through. Oh yeah, there's the hand. All right, so I think you're all probably familiar with the property. It's a single-family farmhouse in a beautifully sited area of the county. And again, I'm not going to focus too much on these existing. You can always circle back, but it's in. I think I've done a few of these, not necessarily in Arlington, but in remarkably good condition for sitting vacant for as long as it has. We've tracked through it a number of times. There are some issues I'm sure we'll find once we get into the demo process, but At the moment, compared to some other things I've been through recently out in Loudoun County, it's in remarkably good condition, so that's a positive. You all probably are aware that the county went through its own URD, Unified Residential District process and defined the parcel, which is this pipe stem lot that goes down to North Manchester Street. As part of that process, they defined that cross-hatched area as an area that would allow an addition to the farmhouse. And as we see when we track through this, we are taking every inch of that available to serve the program. And so the property that is defined is about 13,000 square feet, so it's at about a third of an acre or something like that. So it's not a particularly big property, but it is a single family zone. It's still an R6. The URD really doesn't change the use parameters of R6, but it changes sort of the setback parameters. You can see the addition that's allowed there is about within 3 feet of the property line. So the setbacks are modulated. And that's really sort of the primary thing that's different in the zoning relative to the URD, other than creating the parking itself. So this is from, and I brought a copy if you haven't seen it. The John Milner and Associates is a historic consultant. They did a report. This is from their 2004 report that they did for the county, and it outlines the historic evolution of the property, starting from the left, moving to the right. And the graphic code here is that if it's effectively white, black and white with black lines, white background, it's the building during that phase. And if it's grayed out, that's existing during that phase. So starting on the left, there was the small, what's known as the Torreyson tenant house, which was the smallest component. And that's, I can't read that on the screen. That's from circa 1878. Plan 2, the second from the left, circa 1899. The first building phase of the Reeves farmhouse was built. And the Torreyson tenant house, I don't know exactly where it was on property, but it was moved into the position that it is today. It wasn't there at that stage. And then subsequent to that, Plan 3, directly in the middle, is circa 1904, as basically doubling the size, roughly doubling the size of the original farmhouse, added the porch to the front. And that's, at that time, the farmhouse as we know it today was largely in place. The things that happened after that were a little more subtle, and particularly the Plan 4, which is second from the right, added a little addition to the right. I guess that's east, and which added a bathroom and added some other ancillary spaces. And then finally, post-war, exactly when, not known, I think, post-war, there's a small addition here on the ground floor. So that, and as we kind of track through this, colors are a bit washed out on the screen, but hopefully if you saw the original PDF that was submitted, these existing condition plans and pictures help reinforce what was built when. So again, it's ground floor is lots of public space, parlors, social rooms, kitchen, etc. Upstairs were bedrooms, bathroom to the rear, nice stair hall in the front that leads you up there, as long as you lower your head as you walk up, because there are some headroom issues there. That's why we wear hard hats. And then on the, what is that? Effectively the attic, which we intend to use, and we'll get to what that implication of that means relative to the plan and the massing, is it's a usable attic, probably a bedroom. The foundations vary depending on the building phase. There is a small full cellar, which was part of the 1904 build out over here. And the crawl space under the original farmhouse. There's a fair amount of foundation joists on dirt, so we're not quite sure what we're going to find when we get to that point, but there's likely some deterioration of that. So the farm, so this is our site plan, and what we're going to show you are, we started with what we called in this package the baseline option, which was our first iteration that we shared and discussed with staff, with Lauren and with Cynthia. Got some feedback from those meetings. We developed 2 alternates based on their feedback. They're all in here, so we felt, you know, even though we got some good comments, we thought we would maintain the baseline option, show it to the DRC, get some feedback or some comments on that, and then present the subsequent 2 options that grew out of that based on comments. So those are alternate 1 and 2. And this is a snapshot of all of them. So starting from upper left going clockwise, the existing condition, the baseline option, and apologies, there's a typo here. In the lower right is actually option 1, and then in the lower left is option 2. And the differences that we developed, options 1 and 2, are all about the rear and how we intersect with the original back farmhouse. The program is largely the same in these 2 options. We do get a little bit more program space on the second floor, but the size of the addition, the footprint of the addition is basically the same in all options. The differences would be in the massing and how we connect to the existing farmhouse. So the baseline option, so again, existing and proposed. The primary thing to note here is that it's a 1-story addition to the rear, again, building out that whole footprint allowed in the URD. We've created a simple gable form here. We'll see a perspective view of that that creates sort of a motor court at the arrival. You can see the drive aisle coming up from Manchester Street. There will be somewhat expanded parking than compared to what exists today in order to serve the program. But that creates a motor court. There's some definition on either side. We'll see that in perspective in a minute. And then there's a 1-story addition or 1-story component to that, which is a flat roof component, which is the primary intersection with the rear. And this little piece here, if you can see where the cursor is, the program really requires an elevator to serve the population. Along with some of the developmental challenges of the residents, there are also physical challenges. So an elevator is really very, very important, very essential to serving the program. So that's what you see, this bump. That only goes up to the second floor. It doesn't go up and serve the attic. But I think part of the comments we got from staff when we were talking is, that is a little bit of a bump on the rear of the facade. It's, the massing of that, and that's this piece here. You can see sort of the corner of the existing farmhouse is that edge, and that 2-story piece directly adjacent to it is the elevator. This whole back, and this is right there where the cursor is, if you can see it, that's the original Torreyson tenant house. That's the oldest piece on the property. It also has the lowest headroom, and the greatest challenge is architecturally converting it to usable space. So our thought now, having been there most recently and spending a little bit more time up there, is that the best we can do is to do a cathedral ceiling condition where we take out ceiling and capture and get the headroom we need for that elevator and the corridor that we'll see when we get to the plans. Through a cathedral ceiling condition. That's really the only way it works. So we'll see that in a little bit more detail. But this scenario had a small portion of flat roof here, and the pitched roof of the addition at the that's the western end. So the intent there is to create a, it's like farmyard architecture. You create a court. It has an identifiable mass to it that's we think of a scale that's more similar to some of the outbuildings that used to be on property, the house or the garage that was torn down. But we conceive of that as sort of a farm outbuilding in its form, and give it a diminutive scale to to the primary residence. I think so. That is the primary rationale for that. I'll direct your attention to this. If you can see the cursor here, that's a proposed dormer on the original farmhouse, and we'll get to why we need that. But that's in order to provide headroom and a new stair that goes up to the attic / third floor. There just isn't headroom without that. And through staff's comments and recommendation, we've looked at a different form. This is showing a shed dormer. We've also looked at a gable form for that, which you'll see in the package. So this is option one. And again, it's existing and proposed. Again, the footprint of the addition really hasn't changed. And this form here really is the same, which you'll see some detailed changes there that were recommendations we got from staff. But the form of that is basically the same. The primary difference in this scheme is how we address this area here. So instead of just a sort of a smallish bump to allow the elevator to exist and then a flat roof surrounding it, we basically kind of extruded that end form and maintained the roof line and continued the roof line back, and we'll see a better view of that in a sec here. But then between those two roof forms is a small section of flat roof to make a distinction between the forms. You can also see there, well, I'll point out here, but so in terms of the site strategy, the sort of the urban design form of this area, it's really the same from this perspective of coming up the drive aisle. Here you can see, you know, the slightly different form. It's a gable dormer instead of a shed dormer. You know, I think either is acceptable to us, depending on what the board feels. The other things to highlight here are the differences here is, you know, the gable's running in the same direction. The primary gable here, you know, running in the same orientation is a broken pediment gable. The gable here that exists running in the opposite direction is more of a pedimented gable. So we've done a broken pediment here to reinforce that connection. The other thing we've done is we've sort of reduced the amount of fenestration. The baseline scheme had double windows for those two on the front. We've made them single windows, a little bit more in keeping with the single window language of the original farmhouse. Those are the primary differences there. And you can see here on the rear view, again, here's this form, that's the end, that's the existing end, and it's got this sort of trapezoidal, uneven, unsymmetrical roof form. It has the open porch at the base. Unfortunately, we do have to encapsulate that open porch in order to get the addition to work and the program to function properly. And we'll, in the next scheme, we'll see an homage to that, so to speak. But you can see here, you know, it's again, it's sort of the extruded version of that gable end to accommodate to encapsulate the elevator shaft and gives us a bit more program space here, which I think the large folks appreciate. And so this is option two. Everything I just said about sort of the extrusion of the form, you know, at the back that encapsulates the elevator, all the same. The primary difference here is we turned the gable of that one-story piece that was more independent. Now we've turned the gable and engaged it with that same roof. So there's more continuity of the roof form, and from the ground floor, or sorry, from ground level, it's a little bit different. There's a little bit different feel. It's you're faced with not a gable end at this edge, but an eave. So it breaks down the scale from that perspective. Maybe that's positive. We feel like, from an architectural perspective, any of these are acceptable. We think all of them are good solutions, but you know, some may be better than others. And we're anxious to hear what you guys think. Again, you know, fenestration is modulated in a similar fashion. This has, because the orientation of the gable, it has the pedimented gable, pretty much like this one. And then from the rear, again, the extruded form, same issue. Here we've added a little bit of a sort of a recess or a notch in the facade, just that sort of ghost of that that open porch that we have to encapsulate to get the program to work. When you look at it, the elevation of that, the proportions actually look pretty good. I'm not going to, well, plans I can dwell on as much as you'd like, or just to give you a sense of what's going on in the program and what we feel like on the interior we're proposing in terms of a demolition campaign to get the program to work, the reconfiguring of space, because it is effectively, it's a residential use, but it is an adaptive reuse in a sense. So we need a little bit of flexibility in what we're doing on the interior to get the program to function the way it needs to function. So on the code here and plans is on the right are existing with demo, proposed demo. On the right is the proposed new plan. So you can see obviously the big addition to the rear. It's actually not that big. We did this area count. The existing house is about 3,000, just under 3,400 square feet. The addition is only about just under 1,400 square feet. So as a area proportion, it's relatively diminutive as well. But the new addition, the one story, it's a bedroom wing. It's all bedrooms and bathrooms. It's serving residents. All the space that's sort of the public space on the ground floor will be reconfigured as public space within the residence. Social spaces, kitchen, dining, all that sort of stuff. Just like a regular old single family home. And then as you go upstairs, there is a bit more demo upstairs in order to get the corridor that exists on the second floor is awfully narrow. So we do need to make that a bit wider to get that to function properly. So you'll see a bit more interior reconfiguration upstairs. We're adding a bathroom. This is the elevator and some storage adjacent. The position of that elevator, again, is relevant to the ridge of that addition, that component to the rear. So that's the maximum headroom, coincides with effectively the center line of the elevator shaft. Upstairs, there's one bedroom in this scenario and a couple multi-purpose rooms. The stair that goes up, so right now this is part of a stair hall. You can, I think, see the stair coming up here and landing on the second floor. There's a very small, what's known as a guest room, but it's a very tiny room. It's really kind of a big closet. What we want to do is convert that into a stair hall that goes up to the third floor, currently the attic. There's a little closet here, which creates a terrible headroom problem coming up anyway. So that closet has to be taken out. It just doesn't work. And what we'd like to do is just a stack stair, L-shaped stack stair that takes you up to the attic. And then that necessitates the need. And if you remember briefly we saw that image, it's knee walls up to 4.5 or 5 feet, and then under eave or under the rafters is the space up there. The position of this stair takes advantage of that, but this dash line you can sort of see in this on the screen here is where that dormer would be in order to get the headroom at the top of the stair. This is just a very quick iteration showing either of the two alternatives, the additional program space on the second floor here. So it adds a 7th bedroom, which again, programmatically is a real advantage. To get configured with closets, etc. It's just a kind of a dumb box at the moment, just to give you a sense of what it means and plan these two alternatives. And what to say about that? Roof form, pretty much the same. I'm not going to really spend any time on these elevations unless you'd like to. They're not developed to the point with enough detail for a final submission for you all to review and comment on. But what our goal here is to get some feedback on the site strategy, the general massing, and once we have a more firm direction as a team, we will then be circling back and infusing it with more detail in order to make a formal submission, hopefully in the next cycle, the next round. That was I think a pretty fast pretty fast run through this. I'm happy to circle back and dwell on any of this or answer any questions you might have.
Before you jump in, DRC members, I see Cynthia has her hand up. I have a feeling I know what she might say, but go ahead. Let me see if I'm reading your mind, Cynthia.
I don't know. Hi, everyone. Thank you for that great presentation, Scott, and walking everybody through everything. I just wanted to pose one question before the DRC really got into some of their main comments about the massing and scale. I was just wondering, could Scott or someone from L'Arche maybe give a really quick overview of the program of who's going to be using the house? So there's that. I just want to make sure DRC members have a full picture of kind of the vision for the site.
Yeah, I can have, thanks, a great question. Thank you, and thanks to the committee. L'Arche is a home for people with and without intellectual disabilities. So we live as a family. We live together, people with disabilities and without disabilities in our homes. We have 2 homes in Arlington, South Arlington, and 2 homes in DC also. The program is to create another L'Arche home. The program is to create an opportunity for the county to welcome more of its residents to live in the county, who live with the experiences of intellectual disabilities. The opportunity here is one that creates a lifelong home, is what I believe and the community believes, because of the ability for us to have a housing space that is on grade, so we don't require stairs. All of our current homes need to have stairs in order for us to create the program space because of the confines of the lots that we're in. This space doesn't do that. It gives us the opportunity to welcome someone throughout all of their life through the program. It also creates an opportunity for us through the other program areas, the second floor mixed purpose use areas, for us to welcome people into our homes and into our community. That's a big part of who we are as a community, is to have that opportunity for engagement and encounter of people with and without intellectual disabilities. You'll see a number of bedrooms. The 4 bedrooms are for people with intellectual disabilities, and the other 2 or 3 are for the support people, the assistants who live in the home. We do live together. I lived in one of the homes, Sarah's lived in one of the homes. So we really are living as a family. We are breaking down some of the barriers that we've created around the commodification of work and of labor around serving people with intellectual disabilities. And so we are living together as a community, as a family, and we're cooking together, we're attending to our homes together, and we're building community together. And I'm really excited that the county, so thank you, have said that this is what we're going to do with this home, because it's a great resource for us as Arlingtonians. It's a great resource for us as a community. So that's a short version. Thank you.
That was great. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure everyone had the full context for what the site vision is here. So with that, we will be quiet. We're available in case DRC or others have specific questions, but we really look to you, DRC members, to give some I don't want to use the word critical, but give some really sound feedback and direction to the design team, so then they can continue forward to finalize their design here in the coming weeks.
Okay, well, who would someone like to start?
Robert, I'd like to start, Andy.
Sure. Okay, Andy.
I'd like to ask some questions to begin with. First off, I'm quite familiar with the house. I was an historic architect, John Miller, wrote the original report in 2003.
Hope I got some things right.
I think, as I recall, I think you've got a good deal of it. A lot of the holes in the walls in the interior were stuff like the structural investigation. So, first off, I think this is a really fantastic use. I think the people who had the farmhouse originally, that produced would be very pleased with what is proposed, because I think it really is a community asset and not a single family dwelling. I think that there was always the thought that making some sort of public use or quasi-public use of the space. Along those lines, I think the county, when they decided to basically sell this, went through another investigation. And there's a lot of problems with the house originally when it was built and adapted. I think the county thought that they would like to basically raise the structure enough to put ventilation or whatever underneath. The house was built extremely close. And the back end of the kitchen in the house was pushed to the side. If you take the floorboards out, you'll see there's actually plow marks, if you will, that the joists made, pushing it in, and it's actually not quite level.
Yeah.
It's a really, you can roll marbles down the floor very easily. They take it on a life of their own. So, I guess that there's good intentions with the idea of putting a crawl space, raising the house elevation wise, and letting it change its appearance. So I guess I'm curious about what you're thinking about there.
Well, when I was talking a bit about the elevator and getting the headroom needed, there is this odd delta, at least I think it's odd, where this gable sort of comes out to the end of that farmhouse, and then the original Torreyson house is down from it. Mm-hmm. And we had, at a minimum, kind of thought, well, can we just raise that piece up and meet this gable so that it was continuous? That might help us solve the headroom issues, particularly on the second floor. The challenge, and we've been through, as I said, we've been through a couple of times. We haven't probably go through another 10 times and not find it. Right now, what's in the first floor of that is the kitchen, the existing kitchen. That kitchen floor and the floor of the adjacent dining room line. Second floor doesn't align across that. And that second floor is not connected to the second floor of the house. You only get up there to that. So if we were to raise it up to get more headroom upstairs, we're creating a problem at the ground floor that would be equally hard to solve. We are quite worried about what we're going to find in terms of the quality of the structure at the bottom because it's under. But we just won't know until we come into the process of some interior demo and evaluation. So we may, we're going to have a plan that is more of a flow chart. Depending on what we find, what our response might be, and we may need to certainly keep the county involved in the process. That has been our thought so far. That it may be beneficial, but it may also cause other problems. So at the moment, our approach is what we had discussed, what I mentioned earlier, which is to get rid of the ceiling on the second floor, take advantage of rafter shape and gain our headroom. We think that works right now.
Well, I think the concerns I have really, first of all, this fronts on a park. This bought as part of the park originally. The elevation of the house in relation to, that's the best snow hill when there's snow in Arlington. We didn't get much this year, so maybe that's not that important. But there's a lot of historic pictures that show a great deal of sledding on the hill. So the level of the front porch to the grade is important. It is not set. The porch sits real close to the grade, so that's why I think that's the most public side of the house. The other sides of the house, I think when the county bought it, the property, well, even before, the Reeves family tore down the old dairy, which was a monumental dairy. They tore
Okay,
that
Andy,
down.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think I need you to turn facing this way
Okay,
for people
okay.
to hear. That's all. No, it's
Okay,
okay. Come
okay.
forward. I just think it's challenging to hear when you're talking
Okay.
just to Scott.
Okay,
Okay.
So the relationship of the porch to the front of the house and the site is really important. Trying to keep that and some extent on the side. What I was getting at was there's essentially, in the way the county has divided this single family, originally single family home site, was they kept around the sides, and that was probably the original Reeves thought was they did the subdivision, had the subdivision, left this area out, the whole park area, and the residents around the sides are pretty appreciative of their park and their backyards. Sure. So I think there was some resistance to enlarging things A more than what the county's already said you could work with.
Andy, can you talk a bit about which massing you're thinking of with baseline and alternative 1 and alternative 2?
I think both schemes work. I think that the first one I like perhaps better, but I mean, I think both of them do respect the house. It's in part where the house sits, and even if you had to raise the grade, if you had to raise the house, I think there's other alternatives. If you get away from the idea of having to have a forced air system and a gas furnace, you can go with some other ideas with heat pumps, and you're nowhere near the constraints that if you're, so that and I think in terms of the environment, that's a much better solution. So that would be, I think, an important kind of way to look at it, because I think the coal space to a great extent ends up being used for the gas furnace.
Yeah.
And originally there was a coal furnace. There's still some coal dust.
Yeah, there's a big boiler down in that cellar and a hot water heater. We are planning to use the cellar for some mechanicals. Exactly how much, and what it is, TBD. But we're not going to try and put programs against them.
I think the gable forms are, the gables are basically the original house, but the kitchen was the original structure of the house, but it wasn't in the location it was in now. It was essentially moved downhill, dragged downhill, looks like, and put in place. I think even though there's a park area around the back kitchen area is not, for the general public using the park, I don't think they're going to see more than the front and perhaps the one side of the porch. I think we handle that very well. And I really like both designs in the sense that I think they kind of grow the way the house grew, if you will, which was it evolved, and there were some changes in style and whatever they're quite apparent in various editions. So I think that a number of things could, in that vein, and particularly on the opposite side there by the parking area, that could be, as you've done there. I think that what you've done is, I think both schemes really respect farmhouse, and they kind of look like they could have evolved. I don't think an architect had too much to do with how the house originally got built or ended. They may have gotten something out of it now.
It's interesting though to see how, when you look back, there were building campaigns. You built it this much because you had some money. When you had more money, you built this much more. And these days, it's just tear out a house, build a really big house, and try to finance it. It's just kind of growing of houses over time.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the additions, some sort of gable roof, I almost think that change materials on the roofs and go with some lower slope roofs. Over time, because the house was built over a long period of time in various editions. There's some, well, let's put some unsavory aspects to the areas, particularly about the kitchens. So you solved that. That was used as hired hands and whatever houses for them, and they probably were let go in the winter, either that or froze.
Yeah.
Why don't we hear from the other DRC members? Rebecca, do you have thoughts?
Rebecca, if you're talking, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you. I agree with a lot of what Andy said. I think both schemes respect the original design of the house and the character. I appreciate that both of them step back. I don't know that I have a strong preference one way or another for which one is proceeded. I think the benefit to option one would be the roof lines and not having a low point at the middle. But I think option two has with that lower roof, just from a water shedding perspective. but I could go either way.
Rebecca, I just want to make sure the rendering that we're looking at right now, it's switched. Scott, can you find, because right now alternative option 1 is actually 2.
Yes, because also there's a baseline and alternate 1 and alternate 2, so there are 3 options we're considering in addition to the original.
Got it. Okay, so that is option 1. Can you go to the next 2?
And that's option.
Okay, and then those are the only options, or is there the baseline?
There's the baseline. The baseline is the 1-story flat roof addition, and then the 1.5-story addition that's going on. And there's like a little nook on the back of the historic farmhouse for an elevator. So that's the baseline.
Got it. Then I think from looking at the roof lines of all of them again, I would say option 2. Just because it continues the lines of the roof, and I know that there are lots of different waterproofing measures that can be put in, but I think from a water perspective with the original structure, it keeps everything sloping away.
Omari, do you want to jump in about baseline, alternative 1, alternative? Oh wait, Cynthia, sorry, you have your hand up.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to chime in and just, you said what I was going to suggest, that there's really 3 different options you all are thinking through. So if you could refer to them as baseline, alternative 1, and alternative 2, I just want to make sure the design team gets accurate feedback is all.
Okay.
Yeah, sure thing. First of
all, Omari, can you just hold on 1 second? Michael, what do you want to have to say?
Sure. So I just wanted to say, just as a consideration, as sort of the programming intersects with the design moving forward, this is just kind of a generic comment as you're thinking through the feedback that you might give us, is that we're thinking hard about sort of both the visual aesthetics, but also the long-term durability and maintenance given the proposed use. So one of the things that we are thinking about is simplicity, ease of maintenance moving forward. So to the point, what made me think of it was Rebecca's comment about the more simplicity in terms of waterproofing. You know, this is going to be particularly pertinent and perhaps more pertinent as we get into the conversation about materials. So if, you know, we're talking about this being a permanent home for L'Arche residents as long as the structure stands, and we want that structure to stand as long as possible. And so as we're thinking about sort of how we would go about maintaining, sourcing materials, if a tree branch falls on the roof, and you, depending on one material, might be easier to quickly and rapidly fix that issue than another, particularly given, you know, the older part of the structure will always require some TLC. Given its age and condition. So I just want to throw those, as we're thinking about design, we want to think about the simplicity and durability of materials moving forward, given the programming for the home moving forward.
Yeah, I think going off of that would just reaffirm that alternate option 2, in my mind, from those perspectives, has that clean roof line that would really aid in the maintenance perspective.
Omari?
Yeah, sure thing. I would agree that alternate option 2 definitely provides sort of the cleanest roof line, or probably present the sort of the best sort of water shedding characteristics. I did have sort of one design sort of a comment question. It would be nice potentially to see some. I mean, it's sort of going against what I said earlier, but it would be nice to see some direction in the height of the roofs between the existing, I guess the existing original tenant, I guess portion of the house, and also the new addition there. Particularly, I guess, looking at the view from the southeast, I definitely think the practicality of having one continuous gable line from Page south to north definitely works. Definitely has some benefits, but I think if we do choose an option, I think it would be nice to see some ways to perhaps see some differentiation between the heights of the existing and the new. But I think in general, though, I think I'm definitely a fan of the three. I'm definitely a fan of an alternate option 2 for sure. I like the way the massing works together, and I just want to thank the design team for all their hard work and all the good options here today. Thank you for your time.
All right, well, I'll jump in then. I tend to agree that option 2 makes the most sense, although I do have criticisms of it. I think particularly looking at the view from northwest, the wing that comes out to me looks very institutional. And I think, if it could be broken down in some way or had dormers added, something to make it more, perhaps even, except that it probably doesn't work with the function inside, a porch or something, something to make it, break its scale down, because it just feels very institutional to me. In fact, exactly the sort of thing you see on facilities like this that are, that have modern, modern construction. And so I think something needs to be done to kind of bring it more in line with the sort of the historic character of the house. Looking from the southeast, I am also, as Amari was, a little bit bothered by the, the continuous gable line that, that extends off of that original section. And I'm a little bit bothered that that we've lost the original section. It's almost buried now in the middle of the house. On the other hand, I liked the way you resurrected the little porch, the little cutout at the end, as I think that really helps. And I wonder if there, perhaps, there's more that could be done to break this down. But on the whole, I think as from a roof line, this makes the most sense. The other criticism that I have is on the front, and I think Andy alluded to this somewhat. The porch, to me, having been there and spent a fair amount of time, walking around, and to me, the most wonderful part of this house is the porch, and it's wonderful because you have this incredible, sitting on the porch, you have this incredible view across this park that is, because it's a park, is never going to go away. They're not going to build townhouses, in front of you. And so it's an incredible asset. And I find it a little bit, awkward that you've chosen to put the ramp across the front of it when it really should be a place for, for everybody in the house to come out and sit out on the porch and watch the people bicycle by in the distance and so forth. So I would suggest that you rethink how, and also it is from a historic preservation point of view, I think, as Andy mentioned, is one of the most important parts of this house, and particularly in the way that it meets the ground, where it's not very high above the ground. And that's one of the things that really connects this house to the landscape. So I would look at finding a different way to ramp up, onto the porch, probably down at the other end somehow. And also to somehow maybe, and I know this is tough because of the pipe stem that you've been handed in terms of the site boundaries, but it strikes me having the parking lot right next to this porch takes something away from it. So if there was something that could be done, at least with, by moving the ramp and then maybe putting some landscaping, to kind of shield the parking a little bit from the porch, so that when you're sitting on the porch, what you see is not a parking off to your off to your left, but this park that opens out in front of you. And I think you should be able to do something along those lines. And I think that would really, I think it would respect the historic house better, but it would also add, I think, an incredible amenity to this house. I mean, for the residents to be able to just go out and sit out in chairs on the porch there would be really, really pretty nice, I think. So anyway, those are my comments, and I also support some of the other comments about trying to distinguish between the old and the new. But my main comment about the option 2 is to try to break it down a little bit more to make it, particularly the long wing, to give it a smaller scale so that it fits better with the house. But anyway, but I also want to compliment you on some really nice work, and we all appreciate what you're doing.
Can I ask any direction towards the dormer? Great.
I think the dormer you mean up at the attic to take care of the stair?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I'm fine with it. I think I prefer the shed dormer. Is there a shed dormer?
There's
shed dormer?
There's an existing shed
dormer. I prefer the shed dormer.
Yeah. Okay. So you like the shed versus the gable?
Yeah.
Okay. Rebecca or Omari, can you tell us shed or gable?
Shed for me.
Okay.
Shed as well.
Okay.
Shed would distinguish it from
Okay.
gable additions that were made previously. Made it
Okay.
a little bit more.
And Andy, I just want to clarify. You said that you kind of didn't really have a preference between baseline, alternative 1, or alternative 2. But now that you've kind of heard everybody, are you still leaning that way?
I still think that if we see option one again. I guess what I like about, I still prefer option 1 because option 1 is somewhat more in the spirit of how the house grew. It isn't a major addition. It's obviously a separate piece. And to me, it's sort of more like what would have happened if the Reeves family had lived another 50 years. But that's, I could live with any of those options. I think it should be, I think subtly, but I think it should be different enough that the original house is quite clear, and then not just pieces of other additions. So I guess that's what I like about option 1 is there's a more of a clear break between the units.
Okay. Cynthia, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. Since we're talking about shapes, I just wanted to ask the DRC members to share their feelings. So on the baseline option, and I believe on option 1, the 1-story wing reads as a front gable, whereas in option 2, which seems to be more of the preference from what we're hearing, it has more of a cross gable. And just wondering if DRC members had a strong preference in terms of that roof shape and that orientation of the building. I think when staff was working with the design team on some of the earlier iterations, one of the comments that we kept coming back to is how the front gable feature almost reads like a detached outbuilding, the way that it's oriented on the site. And so we kind of saw that as a positive, given that this has been an agricultural property since its beginning. And that just we thought that lent an interesting approach to perhaps bringing like an outbuilding type feeling back to the design. So I just wanted to, I just felt I wanted to bring that up and kind of get DRC reaction and see if you had a strong preference for that orientation.
Well, I'll start I understand that point of view, and I actually started off thinking that as well. But the thing is that it strikes me as being a relatively large piece that, to me, starts to challenge the house a little bit. And it's in its form, it's not really, it doesn't really feel like an agriculture building. And I think a large agriculture building like that wouldn't be that close to the house anyway. It would be a little bit further away if it was a barn or something. And so it seemed like, that if you're going to do an addition to the house, that it made more sense to just have the house continue to ramble, around. That's why I think that even the cross gable needs some articulation. I think it's just too, I don't want to use the word brutal, but it doesn't have the kind of smaller scale and the finesse of the house that's there. And I worry about, either of them. But I think it might be possible to also articulate the option 1 scheme in such a way that it broke it down some more and made that more interesting. I'd certainly be willing to look at it. But I think what I didn't like about that was the view from the rear, where you then get this kind of double gable thing. It's I don't know. It's this sort of as opposed to just having the. I liked the way that on option 2, the way they replicated the little porch cutout, and then the wing just sort of takes off, off to the side. It gives much more prominence to the end of the house, and the sort of the projected original facade, almost as if you took the original facade and moved it out, to the end of that addition. It seems to me to preserve the character of the back of the house better, option 2. That's how my thinking evolved.
Does anybody else want to chime in on that?
I guess I'd like to add one more comment.
Okay.
The house has got a lot of Reeves family in it. There's a boy's bedroom with cowboy wallpaper. And I would like to suggest that get a piece of it intact.
You're not the only one who wants a piece of that.
That's a good.
There's also which
that's a good fundraising thing, right?
Yeah,
To your point, Andy, we want to be able to tell the story of the house.
Okay.
A big part of who we are is telling the story of our people, and this house gives us an opportunity to tell the story of the house.
That sounds good. The room that you referred to as the closet or whatever, as I understand it, is a sewing room for the wife. That was her room for her activities. So I think you ran a staircase through that, and it is a small room, and it works with the stairs. I think it's appreciated.
I have a small comment, which is, I realize we're talking big picture right now, and I've noticed it mostly on baseline and alternate 1, and that's an alternate 2, so if we go toward that, may not be a problem, but I'm seeing large expanses of unbroken siding. And I realize we've not talked about materiality at all, and you are trying to focus on low maintenance options. But I just thought it's in particular on the extrusions, like when you're looking at it from the southeast. And so I just thought if we could eventually consider something like false windows represented by closed shutters, or something that could break up that surface without actually impeding any of your operations, and just be something so that, because we only tend to see large swaths of unbroken siding on very modern structures, and it tends to also give away the composite materiality, or vinyl siding tends to be like that. You don't tend to see it with wood very much because there was very little unbroken wood in that line. But it is extremely minor, and this may be something that you're going to deal with anyway.
We were just wanted to make sure to circle back, we were talking again about the orientation of the rear addition. Mari and Rebecca, did you have any input you wanted to put similar to what Robert and Andy said?
Not too much more to add. I guess I would just sort of echo what Robert said. I think that the long sort of gable or long the option 2, the sort of long sort of more brutal addition, that should be broken up in some way. I'm not really sure what the answer for it is, but that should be broken up in some way.
Yeah, and I'll just echo what has already been said.
Okay, there was a couple of different ways we thought that this was going to go, but I think we're going to go with our original plan, which was to have you all continue to refine based on this feedback, and then come back to the DRC in April. And basically, with everybody seems very comfortable with the shed roof or the dormer, and I think if everybody agrees to have you all continue refining alternative 2, I would imagine when we get to that point where we would go to the HLRB, they will want to see what were all of the variations that were offered, baseline, alternative 1, alternative 2, but on the feedback that the DRC is given tonight, and then whatever your feedback is in April would be focused on alternative 2. Cynthia, your hand's up.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to take a moment to thank Scott and all of our partners here for really your willingness to work with staff behind the scenes to get to tonight, and for being open and flexible to kind of hearing our initial feedback. And before we finish for the evening, I just wanted to make sure, Scott and others, do you feel you have sufficient direction? Are there additional details or aspects that you would like any comments or feedback on before we chat again? I want to make sure you all have what you need to keep going.
Purely on the design side, I think I have what I need.
I just want to raise the question around the handrails on the porch.
Yeah.
Because not the ramp, but I'm just thinking about making sure people don't fall off. And so that's the only.
And I appreciate Robert's comments on and Andy on the front, the porch, and the ramp visually obstructs that. Not a better place for a ramp, I know that, but we will study it for sure and come back with some alternatives. And we could certainly get in there's a side door at the end of the addition, both for egress, but it's also an access point. I think that would probably make for an accessible entrance, but it's not the front door. You want, the accessible entrance to be the front door, yeah, like everybody else. Mm-hmm. So we will certainly study it, but I'm not that hopeful that there'll be an alternative solution, but we will definitely study it, bring something back.
Just so that the DRC know, when we're going to be working with the team through March and into April, the only thing that is necessary right now eventually is for the HLRB to provide a conditional COA. And so understand that as we're coming up with the massing, confirming that that's what everybody's comfortable with, and then I'm sure we can get into a little bit more, maybe details about the materials possibly during the April DRC, but all of the details that can be figured out farther into the future. But as long as they at least have an additional COA that the HLRB is comfortable with how the addition is being proposed, that is really what the project team needs to move forward, with the understanding that they will need to come back with some of the extra details in the future. Because this is a nice, long new partnership, hopefully. So, okay. Any questions? Okay.
With that, that is our 4th item.
Yep.
And we have finished the agenda. Congratulations on surviving your first DRC meeting.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.